Dolce Gabbana the One EDP Intense, new release from Dolce Gabbana, following up a very big fragrance, Dolce Gabbana the One EDP, the original. This one is a legend in the fragrance community. Everyone knows this one. Does this one stand any chance against this fragrance? What's the performance, the versatility? How's the scent? Is it worth picking up at all? In this video, I'm gonna give you all the answers. Yo, what's up guys, Tim here, welcome back to another video. Today we have Dolce Gabbana the One EDP Intense. So this is a really long name, so from this point on in this video, I'm just gonna call this one the Intense, and I'm just gonna call this one the EDP, just for, shortness sake. So this one right here, at the very beginning when I first tried this one, I wasn't too impressed with it simply because it doesn't have much to do with the original EDP. And I still hold on to that opinion very strongly because it really doesn't have much to do with the original, besides the fact that they both have cardamom in here. This one though, the cardamom is much more fresh, much more noticeable than in the Intense version right here. The Intense version, the cardamom is very muted in the background behind a lot of the notes. So in terms of similarity wise, they really don't have that much to do with each other, which makes me kind of wonder in the beginning why it shares the same name and why this one does not have its own line. But as I wore the fragrance over and over again, I come to realize that these two are used in pretty much the same situation. Maybe this one more winter time, this one more fall time, but they're used in very much the same situation, and that is the date occasion. That's why it's kind of applicable that they share the same name, even though the scent doesn't really share much of a similarity, so to say. They do share the occasion that they're both worn in. So backtrack a little bit, let's talk about the scent of this one now. In the opening, when you spray this fragrance on, you're gonna notice a really kind of big thickness about it. And the thickness is comprised of mainly sweet notes, the benzoin, and darker notes like patchouli and leather, and really kind of cloudy woody note that is the cashmere, which is a synthetic kind of woody-ish modernized note that are in a lot of fragrances nowadays. What you will notice too though is the cardamom, and the cardamom feels very buried behind all of those heavy notes. Even though cardamom is technically a top note, you get it, but it feels like it's buried under all the base notes. Very muted. It feels like the cardamom is just trying to burst out. It's trying to get to the top of the fragrance to really come out into the air and let everyone smell it, but it's just buried under all those heavier notes. The benzoin here gives the bulk of the sweetness. If you guys don't know, benzoin is kind of like an ambery type vanilla fragrance. So you do get a warmth with this fragrance that you would associate with a note like amber. It's in here as well due to the benzoin. The sweetness of the vanilla mixed with the leather kind of gives it a slight bit of a, not gourmand territory sweet, but a borderline gourmandish kind of sweetness because it has this really nice thick kind of richness. The leather kind of acts almost like a chocolatey note. That's why I said it's borderline gourmand, but not quite there yet. So the leather and the vanilla gives it that kind of thick, almost gourmandish vibe that is to me very nice. And the more I dig my nose into smelling those, I really like it. There's also a powderiness as well that's overarching this fragrance that's mixing with the woody notes that is coming from the patchouli. Now patchouli in here, it's not super earthy, it's not super green, it just kind of lends a powderiness that blends in really well with the cashmere note that's up top there. And the cashmere is a note that's gonna stay throughout the fragrance. You're gonna notice this really nice cloudy woody vibe all throughout the fragrance. It's a very nice smelling, mass appealing synthetic note, but if you smell cashmere in other fragrances before, you will recognize it immediately in this one right here. So alongside all the other notes, there's still more nuances in here. As you guys can already tell, the top notes or the opening of this fragrance is quite much. There's a lot going on. The more you dig your nose into it, the more you just get so many little nuances. That's something that I actually pretty appreciate. So it doesn't smell like a completely simple fragrance, if you will. It has as well a clean vibe. Now the rolly, the clary sage kind of gives a slightly bit of a clean vibe. The cypress lends a touch of greenness, but like the cardamom, all those notes seem muted, seems buried in comparison to the richer, sweeter notes that's at the bottom. Is really overpowering all those other notes that's kind of at the top. But those notes do serve to give little nuances here and there to the fragrance, which kind of makes it a little bit more of a complex type of blend, which really makes it not a simple fragrance, and I appreciate that a lot. On to the mid now. A lot of those little nuances you get in the beginning, the cardamom, the green notes, the clean notes, all those starts to die down and get even more heavily buried by all the sweet notes. Now in the air now, this fragrance is gonna start to smell even more warm. Even more warm, less spicy, more sweet, more cloudy, more powdery, more dry. The base notes just really push out and overpower the rest of the fragrance. Now at this stage, this fragrance does smell really nice. I do enjoy the opening a bit more because I do like that cardamom in there in the opening that really just breaks apart, loosen up all those sweet notes and shines really nicely on your skin in the opening. The cardamom is just very attention seeking, attention grabbing in a more muted way in comparison to the original one right here, which is a lot more fresh, a lot more projecting in terms of trying to grab attention. The cardamom in the Intense does it in a lot more of a muted, reserved, kind of like not try hard, loungy feeling type of way. In the mid though, you kind of lose that cardamom a lot. And what you're left with is again a mix of that borderline sweet gourmandish type of fragrance mixed with a lot of the cloudy, powdery woodiness and patchouli type of vibe. So not much has changed. Like I mentioned before, this is a pretty linear progression type of fragrance. You're just gonna lose nuances here and there towards the mid and the base notes. So it doesn't really change all too much. And especially from the mid to the base, which we're gonna talk about now, it really almost does not change at all. The nose just gets weaker and weaker over time. Once it gets from the opening to the mid, the development pretty much feels like it stops, especially if you are just smelling it in the air. It's gonna smell pretty much the same from the mid to the dry down. So unless you really dig your nose, you won't be able to find much differences between pretty much the whole entire fragrances, especially if you have an untrained nose. It's gonna smell pretty similar the whole time. It's just gonna get weaker and weaker over time. But if I were to be really detailed about it, the top notes has the most nuances, the mid notes is really sweet, the sweetest part of the fragrance, and the dry down is where it becomes less sweet and just weaker version of the middle. That's pretty much how this fragrance runs. Now, on to how I feel about this fragrance. This one gives me a very nice kind of sexy vibe. Like it feels really reserved, like loungy, but sexy at the same time. Very relaxing fragrance. I can imagine wearing this at maybe like a cigar bar and just completely just leaning back on my chair, like having a really nice glass of whiskey and just enjoying the night. Maybe I had like a long week at work, I'm just relaxing at the lounge, I'm just drinking, I'm conversing with some friends, some girls walk past by, I look, I smile, you know, stuff like that. Very loungy, kind of reserved, not at all try hard, just in my own world in a way, relaxing, but smell absolutely sexy at the same time. It gives me that air of confidence when I wear it, but it's not an air of confidence that comes with an arrogance like 1 million or that the One EDP, the original here, might give you, because those fragrances are a little bit more loud, a little bit more projecting, if you will. So it gives you a little bit more of that like, hey, I gotta go get that girl, I gotta be a go-getter, I gotta be a doer kind of thing. But this one really gives you that like, you don't need to hurry, you know what I mean? Like you feel sexy, you feel confident, but hey, time is on your side. You really don't have to hurry. You're having a good time in life. Good things will come to you. That's the biggest difference when it comes to vibes between these two fragrances in my personal opinion. Now, which one of these do I enjoy more? I still pretty much enjoy the EDP, the original one, more because I like that kind of freshness that this one really lacks. The Intense version, if it lacks much of anything at all, is the freshness, and that really hinders the projection of this one, which we're gonna talk about later on, the performance section of this. The original to me feels like a more well-rounded date fragrance, while the Intense version feels like it's more specialized, like it leans in more of that specialized direction. This one is more well-rounded, anytime date fragrance. This one more loungy, more relaxing. So yeah, that's my full thoughts on the whole scent. I really like it. I do love owning both of these, to be perfectly honest with you. This one is one I would wear maybe during a daytime in the fall, and this one is one I would wear maybe on a nighttime. So they're not at all a redundant purchase. Oh yeah, that's the one thing I want to touch on, is that you can own both of these. They're not redundant. Even though they're worn in similar situations, they both have completely different vibes, and you can easily own both of them without feeling like you're owning the same fragrance. So kudos to Dolce & Gabbana for not making a redundant fragrance. So love this one for that, and let's move on to the performance. Now, the performance of this fragrance is good, not great, not bad, just good. So what I mean by that, this fragrance lasts on my skin at the lowest point 6 hours and at the highest point 8 hours. So it's right around the edge of being a full day wear type of fragrance, which is kind of nice. If you're wearing this on a date, or you're wearing this maybe just to the office, you really don't need a super long performance like 10 plus Although that's nice, it's not practical. 6 to 8 hours is completely fine. Where this thing becomes just good performance rather than great performance is in the projection. The projection of this one is good for the first maybe 1 hour. 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, the projection is nice. The cardamom is nicely placed in the air alongside the sweet notes, the clean notes. It's just a really nice kind of cloud around you. The woody kind of synthetically cloud mixed with some sweetness and some cardamom. It's really nice for the first hour, and if you're gonna get any compliments at all wearing this fragrance, it's gonna be during that first hour. But after the cardamom dies down, the cleaner notes dies down, and it becomes just a lot of the base notes, you lose that projection quite fast. So that happens around the kind of an hour and a half to 2 hour mark. The fragrance sits quite close to your skin starting from that point on, and at least on my skin anyway, it works that way. So kind of disappointing. The only time where people can really smell you is maybe the first 1 to 2 hours, but after that it's gonna sit quite close to your skin, maybe just around the shoulder area, just right here. That's how close it sits for the rest of the fragrance life until it becomes a skin scent. I would say right around 4 to 5 hour-ish. So yeah, not the best performance fragrance out there. How does performance compare to the original EDP? I would say they're pretty on par in terms of projection. The longevity, the intense has a slight bit edge over the EDP, but projection-wise, they're both pretty the same. So if you're used to the projection of the One EDP right here, you won't really have a complaint when it comes to the intense version. But for those of us who love beast mode fragrance, if you're used to like Invictus or 1 million type of performance, you will be disappointed with the intense, but you also would be disappointed with the EDP. Next, onto the versatility, and we already touched a lot about that in the beginning of the video. So this one is used mainly for dates and nights out or nighttime wear in the fall and winter time, pretty much the same as the One EDP right here. Even in the springtime, I think this one would work just fine because the projection is not too strong. It can work in the springtime as well. I don't suggest wearing this in the summer because it is a sweet, heavy, kind of thick fragrance, and that might be cloying to you, might not be cloying to anyone else because they can't really smell you past the 2 hours, but it might kill you because it's just so pungent in the sun. So not recommended for summertime, and for occasion I would say date, casual, nights out, loungy, or even a signature scent for the fall and winter time. Next, onto the most important question, the compliment factor. Does this one beat this one? That's what you guys are really wanting the answer to, basically. So short answer, no. And the reason being is that the EDP here is fresher. It's fresher, more well-rounded, a little bit more masculine than this one. And fresher fragrances does better than sweet fragrances any day of the week. Sweet fragrances really only do well when accompanied by fresher notes, long-lasting fresher notes, which this one really again lacks. So this one will not get you as many compliments as the One EDP. This one just smells more mass appealing, easily more mass appealing than this one. But this one, not to say it's a bad fragrance, it will be able to get you some compliments, it's just not at the same level as this one. I would say if this one is an A tier compliment getter, this one is more of a C+ or B- tier in terms of compliment getting. Both are mass appealing, just this one is massively more mass appealing. So lastly, we're gonna talk about the price. I'm actually on Macy's website right now to look at the retail price for you guys. This one for 50 ml is gonna go for $78, and for 100 ml is gonna go for $98. So the price right now as it stands, is it worth it? I would say no, it's not worth it. That's a very expensive price for a fragrance like this. The EDP right now, you can find 100 ml for around $50, sometime at the lowest even $45. So this is right now a way better purchase than the One EDP Intense. So at what price do I find this fragrance to be worth it? I would say once the price starts to come down a little bit, which I hope it does, it seems to be that way for the One fragrances. They usually come down after like 6 months or maybe a year or so. It does come down to the $50 range kind of mark. This one at $50, I would say, is a great purchase. Much like this one at $50, great purchase, especially if you can grab it $50 for 100 ml. This will serve you really nicely in the fall and winter time. It's really quite versatile because it can be worn, like I said again, as a signature scent as well. You will get a lot of wear out of this one, and the smell itself has a level of complexity to it that makes it more higher quality than a lot of designer fragrances that are out there on the market. So I would wait for a price to drop down to that. Please do not purchase this one full retail with tax and shipping. Not a good deal. 100 plus for a scent like this is just too much. You can wait a few more months for it to drop down or get a sample for yourself if you can find some cheap samples on eBay or some other websites. Alright guys, that will be it for this review of Dolce Gabbana, the One EDP Intense. If you've tried this fragrance before, leave it down in the comment section below. What do you think about it? Rate it from 1 to 10. Just give me your full thoughts. I want to know what you guys think. And with that being said, I'll see you guys again in the next video. Peace and bye.